Hello and good evening, I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now, more than 10,000 police personnel, including officers, have been placed under quarantine, with over 200 of them testing positive for COVID-19 and undergoing treatment. Now, the police force has over 100,000 members across all divisions. So, if 10,000 police members are under quarantine, that's 10% of the police force. Now, this has put, according to authorities, a huge strain on the deployment of personnel, and the police are now considering this situation as a serious security concern. Now, so much has been said, Sharad, about, the conditions of detention centers and prisons and, migrant workers, foreign workers. But I'm wondering whether police officers, this has been a policy blind spot, because, how did we let this get to this point before raising red flags?
Well, I don't know if it's a policy blind spot. I'm not sure exactly what would have to... what would the elements of a policy blind spot be? But all frontlines, and police are there, of course, and the explanation has been given. It's their constant contact with the public, right? And just the sheer volume of people they will be in touch with. So, despite having the mask and the other types of personal protection, the chances of contracting the disease are much higher.
Yeah, it is the nature of the job. They are frontliners, and they are the ones who have to go down to red zones and enforce the 500 over roadblocks that have been in place since the start of the CMT.
Yeah, but I think about many of us, and this is purely anecdotal. I mean, I cross from Petaling Jaya to Kuala Lumpur almost every day, and I've not encountered a single roadblock myself. So, I mean, but the point is, the police are stretched, and I think the police acknowledge that. The question is, what are the consequences of it? And also, are there other hidden issues? And this has been brought up by some observers, suggesting that, in fact, the police quarters where police officers live might also be a source of the problem. And I thought that was very interesting, because it harkens back to a Royal Commission report from 2005, the Royal Commission to Enhance the Operation Management of the Royal Malaysian Police, that mentioned police welfare and the need to look after police welfare. And the question is, are their living quarters perhaps adequate until this point in time? But moving forward, will police quarters have to make sense of the pandemic? And should there be more space for them, essentially?
For sure. I mean, I think that's a very valid point to talk about welfare and, just, I guess, the living quarters, police barracks and the like. But also, I think what we need to do is, I'm hoping to get more clarity from the Home Ministry about what policies are going to be put in place to make sure that this doesn't become a national security concern, that there are, risk mitigation measures being put in place, but also not just for police, but now that we know every aspect of national security needs to be able to deal with it, the armed forces and the like.
Yeah, and also the fact remains that whatever jobs we do, we also have our personal lives, and we have our social networks, and which also expose us. And so everybody really is potentially going to be exposed to the disease. You can stay at home; it might help you to some extent, but for those of us who have to work, have to go out, and we have to encounter other people, the risk is always there. Okay,
well, let's take a look at other news. Now, earlier this week, it was announced that effective November 1st, which is this Sunday, employers who wish to rehire foreign workers or apply for the recruitment of expatriates will now be required to first advertise the job vacancies on My Future Jobs, which is what the government is calling the National Employment Portal. Now, foreign workers or expatriates must only be considered for these job applications if no Malaysians apply for or qualify for the position. Now, according to the Human Resources Ministry, this is to ensure that Malaysians are given top priority in employment opportunities. But, the question is, what consequences will we see from this new policy? Could we see unintended consequences stemming from this?
Yeah, Melissa, I do believe that some of these provisions were already there even long before the pandemic, which is that, you know, in certain sectors, you'd have to first justify your use of foreign labor, perhaps even foreign talent, but the distinction being the wage level, actually, and maybe the skill set and the job description. But which is a sound policy. I personally believe it's a sound policy to the extent that we want to be providing jobs and at least opportunities for locals. The question really is, how bureaucratic has it been in the past, and how much more bureaucratic will it be under present conditions? And again, you know, philosophically and maybe even more practically, you know, can government or should government micromanage how enterprises deal with their talent?
Yes, I mean, we've seen this also, government micromanaging, you know, work from home decisions, making these decisions instead of enterprise. I really do wonder, Sharad, I mean, whether this is, I have to disagree with you, I wonder whether this is the right solution to the current issue of the current spate of job losses, the current need to create new employment, whether the stand of the government in saying, well, you know, let's not hire foreign workers or foreign talents, let's give these jobs to locals, I don't think is necessarily the only solution to this problem. And I think personally, I wonder whether this policy has been done with thought and care and consultation with enterprise. And that's my question. What unintended consequences will we see from this?
Let's just put it this way. You know, whereas enterprises are looking at the bottom line, they're looking at what they need, and it's very narrow and specific to them, and that's their right. Policymakers and politicians have to look at the broader consequences of Malaysians being unemployed, right? So either the state comes in and provides some sort of safety net for people who don't get work, or they try to help people get work. And I think this is probably one of those efforts to do so.
Trying to help people to get work.
Yeah, and the question, of course, is whether it will, well, you know, does it require Malaysians who don't have jobs to go to that portal?
I think the idea should be to incentivize businesses to prioritize locals. This is just adding a layer of bureaucracy. This is no incentive by the government to private enterprise.
Yeah, but you know, it's always carrots and sticks when it comes to policies, right? You have to provide incentives, and then you provide disincentives. And the question is the mix of those two. The labor market isn't, as people imagine, some open field where everybody has perfect knowledge of what's happening across the country, and also people don't necessarily move just because there is a job, right? Even in desperate times. And so there are a huge number of considerations that go into play. The time frame for this, you know, advertising for locals, I think is very interesting. It might give
14 days for how they've categorized foreign workers, and 30 days for what they categorize as expatriates.
Which isn't very much, right? So it's interesting. The bar has been set pretty low, even for enterprises. Some people argue that's a bar that's still unnecessary.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. But after this, we will be taking a closer look at Perak State Assembly, which has just passed a bill to lower the eligible age of candidates to 18 years. Will other states follow suit now? That's all coming up in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned to consider this. Watching Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. With me is Sharad Kuttan. Now, the Perak State Legislative Assembly has passed a bill to amend the state constitution to lower the eligible age for candidates from 21 to 18. The amendment was passed after unanimous support from all 59 state assemblymen. Joining us on the show tonight, we have Howard Lee, State Assembly Person for Pasir Pinji, Perak, and he's also former State Exco for Youth Sports and Human Development. Howard, let's talk about this amendment. It's going to allow 18-year-olds to take part in elections and also to stand as candidates for the state of Perak, the Perak State Assembly. Now, this was a Pakatan Harapan agenda, now passed by a Perikatan Nasional state government. Are you nevertheless happy with this result?
Thanks for having me, Melissa Sharad. Of course, I'm over the moon because, of course, as you mentioned quite rightly, this was something that was initiated by the Pakatan Harapan government when we were in federal government. Of course, we are no more. But I think there are two verticals that we can look at. Number one is the actual democratic institutional implications that this bring. Of course, suddenly, with the strike of a day's sitting and a unanimous vote, we will see an extra 400,000 plus Perakians qualify to contest in the next state elections whenever that will come by. So, I mean, if you could look at it from a kind of quantitative point of view, where you're going to have suddenly a very widened pool of talent to occupy the state assembly. Of course, whether or not that will happen, whether it's in 1 seat or 10 seat or all 59, we don't know. But at least the floodgate is open at the very least for those who are now aged between 18 to 21. I would also say that it's another step towards a paradigm shift, shift away from the kind of age-old hierarchical feudalistic notion of representation, where we will see by and large slightly older people occupying the state assembly, representing the people, and of course this is not a new trend. This has been happening over the years, just very drip feed slowly.
Okay, but can I jump in here? The one thing, of course, is that this move by the state government is really a consequence of the law being passed at the federal level. It moves through the states. The states have to align themselves with the federal level. So it wasn't so much an initiative by the current government. It just was a consequence of that legislative process, I understand. But you bring up a very interesting point. You're saying that there has been a ground shift, but yet we see that when it comes to discussions about leadership today, we have a gerontocracy. I mean, we have essentially people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s vying for the top leadership of this country. Is it about political parties ultimately? If political parties do not do more than tokenism for youth voices, are we going to be stuck for a very long time with the same problem?
I would say that we've been stuck with that kind of feudalistic hierarchicalism for centuries, you could even say. But I just want to kind of pull from what you said just now. And of course, with federal constitutional amendment that came along last year, it kind of becomes part of the kind of autopilot motion, where the Federal Attorney General's office will then kind of instruct the state, the state AG or the state legal advisor to just move along and do the same for the state constitutions. Of course, each state constitution will stipulate the age limit of members of each legislature. So I would like to kind of make sure that we make the point here. This is a continuation of a Harapan agenda. But of course, in terms of moving the agenda of mainstreaming youth leadership, I mean, we can say that this is a progressive move in a conservative world. Politics, in terms of representation, it's a by and large conservative kind of echo chamber. So I think what happened yesterday and now moving forward, it's an attempt in breaking or at least widening that echo chamber of political leadership.
Okay, so just on that note, because you did say that this signals a shift and the lowering of the age is from 21 to 18. Currently, in the state of Perak, in the Perak State Assembly, do we see a lot of young representation? Is there? I mean, if you lower it down to the age of 18, were 21s already involved at in the State Assembly?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the baby of the house right now in Perak, he's from Astaka, the member for Astaka. He was elected when he was 28. But of course, if we were to look at it from a federal point of view, baby of the house in the parliament right now is Prabha. He's 24 now, but he was elected when he was 22. And, you know, I think by and large, youth participation has been mainstream, and mainstreaming of youth leadership has also been happening, but it is very much so down to the individual parties. I mean, I enjoy a very youthful environment within the party leadership of my party. And of course, right now we have a 32-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 35-year-old. And within the opposition bloc right now, we have another 33-year-old.
Okay. So yes, okay, I understand that, but I must say I will take exception to your use of Prabhakaran as an example, because if not for Tien Chua being disqualified, he would never have made it to the slate. So let's put that aside. Quick question for you. The Election Commission hasn't put 18-year-olds on the rolls yet. Do you see this happening anytime soon? Are you doing anything to expedite the matter or force them to actually expedite this process?
Of course, this is where the other vertical, the political vertical, comes in. And I'd like to even mention the fact that if it wasn't for the fact that Bersatu, or the Menteri Besar, is under fire amidst a massive internal brawl within Perikatan Nasional in Perak, I don't think the bill would have hit the floor yesterday. And you know, because I think to enable a better set of optics and a narrative that would enable the State Assembly to show unity, or for them to avert a crisis, the Perikatan Nasional state government to avert a crisis, it wouldn't hit the floor. But of course, on the Election Commission side, I think we need to take a couple of approaches. One, a political approach to press the government to expedite the political instruction for it to happen. Number two, I think constant negotiations, engagements, and kind of a slow but gentle push for the officials in the Election Commission would do us a load of good.
Okay, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Howard. We really appreciate your time. We're going to take a quick break, but after this we'll come back and we'll hear from Undi 18 about this recent development. Stay tuned to Consider This. Hi, thank you so much for staying with Sharad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation about Perak's move to amend its state constitution to lower the age limit for standing as an electoral candidate. This is from 21 now to 18. Mior Muhammad Hakim is a campaigner for Undi 18. Mior, good evening. Now, and I want to see, now we have 18-year-olds in Perak who can contest in the next election as an adun, but themselves may not necessarily be able to vote. The Election Commission, the EC, has yet to implement the enrollment of 18-year-olds as voters. How do you square this? Are you pushing to do anything to make this materialize faster?
I see. Thank you for the questions, Melissa, and thank you for inviting me here. So, yeah, until the lowering of the voting age is gazetted, this will be the case. Even on a national level, currently, an 18 years old could have competed even in the Tanjung Piai by-election back in 2019, but they were not able to vote for themselves yet. It is unfortunate, but we have to let the due process to be done and bureaucracy to run its function. I think one positive thing that we can take out of this is that the Election Commission has said that they are set to roll out the automatic registration by June 2021, and simultaneously the lowered voting age at 18 years old. But ultimately, I think it requires like more political will and a lot more support from everyone to push for this to be done faster. Otherwise, we have to wait till next year to see this happen.
Okay, so Undi 18 is not just accepting the EC's timeline of June of next year. You guys want to push it faster. If I may ask, because the EC's excuse or the EC's rationale for saying that it will only be done next year is because it's going to be carried out concurrently with automatic voter registration, and also they want to get all the SOPs in place. Do you think it's better to have it done now as opposed to having it done perfect?
Well, I think another issue that they also mentioned about automatic registration is about the address of the voters. So they recently they do say that the address might not be the same if we make it automatic right now. So it does require a campaign from them to ask voters to update their address to the latest address so that they can be registered to a proper constitution. So I guess we should focus on having a perfect registration rather than rushing everything. But with a lot of other support as well, and Undi 18 also wanted to do this and pushing for this so that we can have it as soon as possible, because that's our aim after all.
It's wonderful to see 18-year-olds empowered, but how many 18-year-olds in Perak have greeted this news with open arms? I mean, there was a lot of discussion about, and a lack of confidence among young people about being able to do this. That there was a pushback on the lowering of the age. What's the feeling on the ground in Perak? Do young people want to be part of the process at 18?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. There are some setbacks that we heard as right now. But I can say that within my circles and also people around me, they have been quite supportive on this because they think if we have done it at the national level, then it should be aligned at state level as well. So basically it's inevitable for this to happen. So sooner or later, this should be will be reduced to 18 years old, and all people would vote for them. And the feeling that I had is right now they are quite unready, not prepared for the change yet. But now, since they are given the opportunity, I do think that the youth wanted to reach out and get into more engagement, to a political engagement, a participation now that opportunity given, because they believe that if they are given the opportunity, they trust us to do this.
Okay, so what about, do you trust the political parties to do more than tokenism, allow young people to become candidates, not just as a voting bank, but actually as candidates within their own parties?
Mm-hmm. I believe that each party have their own succession plan on how they want to teach the young voters, and seeing that there's a lot of parties that trying to highlight more younger and younger candidates. This is actually a positive development, and they are actually looking more youth to be involved in their parties, and I see it's an absolute win for us.
All right. Mia, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. We really appreciate you joining us on the show. That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.